Saturn does not look dangerous. It hangs in the imagination like a finished thought, almost too symmetrical to be real. The pale globe, the thin shining rings, the balance, the distance. Everything about it suggests elegance before it suggests force. Yet that may be the deception at the center of the image, because one of the most beautiful objects in the solar system may also be one of the clearest examples of how beauty can survive violence, how order can emerge from disruption, and how a planet can wear catastrophe so well that the catastrophe disappears inside the spectacle. That is the real question hidden inside Saturn's grace.
When looking at the rings, what is actually being seen? A decoration? A stable planetary accessory? Or evidence, the bright surviving trace of something broken, scattered, and still not entirely at rest? Saturn has been turned into a symbol of calm. In drawings, in textbooks, in logos, in childhood memory, it is often the planet chosen to represent the solar system itself. Not because it is the largest, not because it is the hottest or the strangest, but because it looks complete. Jupiter is overwhelming. Mars is familiar. Neptune is remote. Saturn looks composed. It seems to have found a visual perfection the other planets missed.
That image is not false. Saturn really is astonishing. The rings are vast, but almost impossibly thin. Most of their visible area is made of water ice, which is why they reflect sunlight so effectively. From far away, they can seem solid, like polished bands wrapped around the planet. But up close, they are not surfaces at all. They are swarms, countless particles ranging from dust-sized grains to chunks as large as houses, all orbiting Saturn under gravity, collisions, and constant disturbance. Even the beauty itself, on closer inspection, is granular. And that is where the suspicion begins, because rings that bright are not easy to explain. In cosmic terms, bright ice is fragile. It darkens over time. Micrometeoroids strike it. Dust contaminates it. Radiation alters it.
If Saturn's rings had simply endured unchanged for the age of the solar system, many models suggest they should look much dirtier than they do. That does not automatically mean they are young, and it does not settle the argument. But it turns the rings from a pretty feature into a problem. Their beauty starts to behave like a clue. The first shock is scale. Saturn's main rings stretch hundreds of thousands of kilometers across, but their thickness in many places is measured in tens of meters, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on location and local structure. A formation that broad and that thin does not simply sit there in silence. It has to be maintained by orbital motion, by countless collisions, by the inability of the material to gather into a single moon, and by constant gravitational nudges from Saturn and its satellites. The rings look like architecture. In reality, they behave more like a crowd under strict physical law. The second shock is that the rings may not be innocent leftovers. There are several serious ideas for where they came from, and none of them make Saturn gentler. One possibility is that the rings are ancient, a remnant from the material that once orbited Saturn during the planet's formation. In that view, what remained inside a critical boundary could never fully assemble into a moon, because Saturn's tidal forces kept tearing potential structures apart. Another possibility is harsher and more dramatic. A moon or moon-sized body wandered too close, crossed the Roche-limit, and was pulled apart by Saturn's gravity. Outside that distance, self-gravity can hold an object together.
Inside it, tidal forces can overwhelm that cohesion, especially if the object is already weak, fractured, or partially molten. A world can become debris not because of an explosion, but because the difference in gravity across its own body becomes too great to survive. That is one of the most violent ideas in planetary science, precisely because it looks so clean in the end. No flames, no cinematic shockwaves spreading through space. Just a body entering the wrong region, deforming, fracturing, and eventually becoming a ring. There are also collisional scenarios. A moon can be shattered by impact. Fragments can spread, interact, and evolve. Some may escape, some may reaccrete, and some may remain trapped in a ring system and be sculpted over immense spans of time.
In those models, Saturn's beauty is not just debris, it is processed debris, broken matter reorganized into structure. And there is more than one layer to the violence. Even if the original source of the rings involved the destruction of a moon, the rings seen today are not frozen in the moment of that destruction. Ring particles collide constantly. They clump and disperse. Gravitational resonances create waves, gaps, edges, wakes, braided structures, and sharply defined boundaries. Small moons shepherd material into narrow bands. The rings are not merely the aftermath of a violent event. They are an active, dynamical system in which order is continuously being negotiated. That is why Saturn's rings are both beautiful and suspicious. They are too intricate to be decorative.
Their fine structure records interaction. One reason the rings feel almost unreal is that they seem too sharply organized for debris. The A ring, B ring, and C ring are not random smears. Between them lie divisions and gaps, some created or maintained by orbital resonances, where particles are repeatedly tugged at frequencies that prevent stable accumulation. The Cassini division, the Encke gap, the Keeler gap, these are not empty design features placed for beauty. They are signatures of interaction. In some cases, embedded moons help clear paths. In others, gravitational timing does the work. The ring system is full of places where matter is told over and over again where it cannot remain. And the composition adds another layer to the puzzle. The main rings are dominated by water ice, with surprisingly little dark rocky contamination compared with what might be expected if they had simply sat exposed and unchanged for billions of years.
That does not mean the rings are pure in any absolute sense, and it does not by itself force a single origin model. But it does mean Saturn's brightest feature is chemically suggestive as well as visually striking. Something about the history of this material, when it formed, what it came from, how it has been processed, or how it has been renewed, must account for why so much of it still reflects light so effectively. There is another possibility that makes Saturn's history even more intricate. A moon may not need to be fully destroyed in one instant to produce the system seen today. Some models allow for partial stripping, repeated encounters, fragment exchange, or cycles in which ring material spreads outward and later helps form small moons, while new disturbances feed fresh debris back inward. In that kind of history, Saturn would not have one simple catastrophic origin story, but an extended regime of damage and reassembly. Beauty would not come from a single violent episode. It would come from a system that repeatedly converts instability into temporary structure. That helps explain why astronomers pay such close attention to moon-ring interactions. Small bodies near the rings can launch waves into ring material. Resonances can open gaps or pile particles into denser bands. Embedded objects create propeller-like disturbances that reveal unseen masses moving within the ring plane. Even where no large moon is obvious, the rings betray hidden influences. Saturn's system is therefore not just evidence of past violence. It is a laboratory in which gravitational control, fragmentation, confinement, and loss can be watched in action. There is also growing evidence that some of Saturn's moons are migrating outward faster than once expected, exchanging angular momentum with the planet and reshaping assumptions about long-term system evolution. That does not solve the ring mystery on its own, but it reinforces the larger point. This is a system with history, motion, and consequences, not a still life in space. Orbits shift. Tides matter. Time does work. Even Titan, Saturn's largest moon, contributes to that sense of a system too complex to be ornamental. Titan is massive enough to participate meaningfully in the gravitational story of Saturn's satellites, and its very existence reminds us that the planet's family is not made of one kind of object. There are dense inner moons, icy outer worlds, active moons, cratered moons, atmosphere-bearing moons. Diversity at this level usually signals a deep and eventful formation history. Saturn's elegance is therefore not simplicity. It is an arrangement imposed on complexity. The Cassini mission transformed that suspicion into something closer to a forensic investigation. For more than a decade, Cassini observed Saturn, its rings, and its moons at close range. It measured ring mass, mapped structures, watched gravitational disturbances propagate through ring material, and helped tighten the debate over age and origin. Cassini did not hand over a final answer.
Saturn remains more open than that, but it changed the quality of the mystery. The rings were no longer simply admired, they were interrogated. Some observations point toward a relatively lower ring mass than once expected, and that matters because lower mass rings can be more vulnerable to darkening by outside material over time.
That has been used in arguments that the bright main rings may be younger than Saturn itself, perhaps dramatically younger on geological timescales. Other researchers caution that the story is not so simple. Ring recycling, ongoing fragmentation, selective processes, hidden complexities in contamination rates, and uncertainties in how ring mass and composition evolve can all change the picture. So the honest version is this: observations strongly suggest that Saturn's rings are not a trivial, settled feature. Their brightness, mass, and dynamical behavior have kept the origin question alive. The data constrain the possibilities. They do not close the case. That distinction matters because Saturn is most interesting when certainty is resisted. The planet is not beautiful because every detail is known. It is beautiful because the visible form is stable enough to admire and unstable enough to investigate. The hidden violence is not limited to the rings. It runs deeper, into the history of the whole system.
Saturn formed inside a young solar system that was already violent by default. Giant planets grew out of collisions, accretion, migration, and competition for material. Their gravity shaped everything around them. They perturbed smaller bodies, captured some, ejected others, and influenced the architecture of satellite systems that still preserve traces of that early chaos. Saturn's moons are not just companions. They are part of the evidence. Their orbital resonances, their densities, their geologic diversity, and their interactions with the rings all suggest a history of rearrangement, loss, and repeated gravitational negotiation. Some of the moons may carry the marks of impacts and internal stresses from earlier eras. Some may have migrated.
Some may have exchanged angular momentum with the rings or with one another. Mimas, Enceladus, Tethys, Dione, Rhea, Titan. Each belongs to the serene portrait from a distance, but none belongs to a static world. Saturn's system is not a clock assembled once. It is closer to a long argument among orbiting bodies. Enceladus is one of the clearest examples of active instability still present. Its south polar region vents plumes of water vapor and ice grains from an internal ocean below an icy crust. Those particles feed Saturn's diffuse E-ring. This is not the same as the bright main ring system, but it matters for a larger reason. Saturn is still generating visible structure from internal and orbital stress right now. Tidal heating, produced by gravitational interaction, keeps a small moon geologically active far from the sun. Saturn's beauty is not only inherited from ancient destruction, parts of it are still being written by present tension.
Clear and defined edges of certain rings reveal struggle. Shepherd moons, such as Prometheus and Pandora, help shape the F-ring, one of the most delicate and chaotic features in the system. Their gravity confines material, disturbs it, and helps create a ring that can look braided, kinked, and constantly on the verge of coming apart. The result is lovely from afar and deeply unstable up close. Saturn repeatedly turns near disorder into pattern. That same principle appears in the waves inside the rings. Some are driven by resonances with moons. Others may be tied to oscillations inside Saturn itself. In a remarkable twist, parts of the ring system can function almost like a detector, responding to subtle gravitational variations and preserving them as patterns. Astronomers can read spiral density waves and other structures the way a seismologist reads motion in Earth's interior. Saturn's beauty is not just an object of vision.
It is an instrument. The rings do not merely shine, they record. By this point, it becomes hard to keep calling Saturn gentle. There is also violence in Saturn's atmosphere, though it is a different kind from tidal destruction. The upper cloud layers can look soft, even muted compared with Jupiter's turbulence, but Saturn is capable of planet-spanning storms. Roughly once every Saturn year, about every 30 Earth years, a massive outbreak known as a Great White Spot can erupt, growing into a disturbance so large it wraps around the planet. Beneath the calm color palette are deep convective processes,
powerful winds and an atmosphere that stores energy on scales difficult to imagine. The North Polar Hexagon, one of Saturn's most famous atmospheric structures, looks almost artificial in its geometric persistence. But it is not a sign of calm design. It is a standing wave in a moving atmosphere, order created by motion, stability emerging from flow.
This is one of the reasons Saturn unsettles the longer it is observed. Almost every feature that first appears elegant becomes, on investigation, the visible edge of a force. The hexagon is fluid dynamics. The rings are orbital mechanics plus collision plus fragmentation. The E-ring is fed by cryovolcanic activity. The gaps in the rings are not decorative spacing, but consequences of resonance and gravity. Even the purity of the image depends on processes that either destroy material, redistribute it, or prevent it from becoming something else. And the rings themselves are temporary. That may be the most important emotional correction Saturn forces on the imagination. The rings seem eternal because they are what the planet is famous for, but they are not permanent ornaments. Material from the rings is slowly being lost.
Some of it spirals inward along magnetic field lines as charged particles and water products interact with Saturn's environment, contributing to what has been called ring rain. The details vary across the system and remain an active area of study, but the broad implication is clear enough. Ring material does not stay suspended forever. Over long timescales, the rings evolve. They spread, they erode, they darken, they lose mass. What looks timeless may be passing through a temporary luminous phase. In that sense, the beauty of Saturn is not only born from violence, it is also vulnerable because of it. A ring system created or shaped by disruption must still obey the same physics that threatens to erase it. This is where astronomers become reconstructors rather than mere observers. Saturn cannot be rewound. No telescope can watch the birth of the rings in real time.
So the hidden history has to be inferred indirectly. Ring composition is measured, particle size distributions are modeled, resonances are mapped, orbital dynamics are simulated, moon interactions are tracked, contamination rates from outside dust are estimated, gravitational effects are compared against expected structures. A clue by itself proves very little. Many clues, held together by physics, can begin to outline events no one has ever seen. That method is easy to overlook because Saturn feels so visual. It tempts the eye into thinking the eye is enough. But planetary science often advances by refusing that temptation. The visible planet is only the front surface of the problem. The deeper reality is assembled from mass measurements, spectra, trajectories, perturbations, thermal behavior, and long mathematical patience. Saturn's hidden violence has not been discovered by dramatic revelation.
It has been reconstructed the same way ancient crime scenes are reconstructed, by patterns that should not exist unless something happened. And some of the strongest evidence is negative. A moon should be there, but is not. A ring should be darker, but is not. A boundary should be softer, but is not. Material should have clumped, but did not. In science, absences are often as revealing as presences. Saturn's elegance can be read as a list of things prevented from happening and things forced to happen instead. That is why the planet becomes more profound, not less, when uncertainty remains. Several origin scenarios are still viable in different forms. The main rings may involve the destruction of an icy moon, or remnants of primordial material, or a more complex history involving repeated cycles of breakup and reaccretion.
The age of the visible rings remains actively debated. The exact balance between ancient inheritance and later restructuring is still being worked out. None of that weakens the central insight. It strengthens it. Because whichever model eventually dominates, Saturn's most iconic feature is not a passive ornament. It is the product of powerful constraints and, very likely, episodes of loss. Seen that way, Saturn belongs to a larger pattern in the universe. Stars are born in collapsing clouds that heat, compress, and ignite. Galaxies grow through mergers. Planets form by accretional violence. Moons are cracked by tides. Surfaces are shaped by impact. Nebulae can be the remains of exploded stars. The cosmos does not reserve beauty for peaceful things.
Again and again, beauty appears where matter has been stressed, broken, rearranged, or forced into temporary order by competing forces. Saturn only makes that truth easier to feel because the result is so clean.
The violence is hidden under proportion. There is something almost philosophical in that. Not because Saturn teaches a lesson in any sentimental sense, but because it corrects a human instinct. It is natural to associate beauty with harmlessness, symmetry with innocence, stillness with safety. Saturn refuses all three associations. A ring can be a graveyard. A geometric atmosphere can be a wave in violent motion. A pale planet can conceal storms of continental scale. A graceful system can be losing itself even while it shines. And yet that does not make Saturn less beautiful. It makes the beauty deeper and more honest. To know that the rings may be debris is not to ruin them. It is to finally see what kind of beauty they possess. Not decorative beauty, consequential beauty.
Beauty as the visible state matter enters after surviving forces that could have erased it entirely. The rings are exquisite not because they deny violence, but because they preserve its logic in a form the eye can follow. That may be why Saturn remains so difficult to outgrow. It satisfies the first response, wonder, and then rewards the second response, which is suspicion. It is beautiful enough to attract attention and structured enough to withstand inquiry. Every close look adds detail. Every detail adds mechanism. Every mechanism points back to energy, stress, or instability. Saturn keeps converting admiration into investigation. And one day, the rings may thin beyond recognition, on timescales vast compared with a human life, but brief compared with the age of the solar system. This famous version of Saturn may not endure.
Future skies elsewhere may know the same planet differently. The emblem could fade. The bright evidence could disperse. What now looks permanent may turn out to be a moment. That is the final unease Saturn leaves behind. The most graceful planet may be displaying the aftermath of destruction in a temporary form, during a narrow window in which it can be seen and named and mistaken for serenity. So when Saturn appears in the dark as a nearly perfect arrangement of light and line, the image is not line, but it is withholding. The rings are not only beautiful bands around a distant world, they are matter held in tension. They may be the remains of something that crossed too close, broke apart, and never came back together.
They are sculpted by moons, disturbed by resonances, altered by collisions, brightened by ice, and slowly diminished by time. The atmosphere above them can erupt into giant storms. The moons around them pull, feed, confine, and record. The whole system is less like a jewel box than a long-lived reconstruction of events too large and too old to witness directly. Because Saturn reveals something larger than itself. In the cosmos, beauty is often not the opposite of violence. It is what violence leaves behind when gravity, time, and motion are finished shaping the debris. And sometimes the most graceful object in view is graceful for the darkest reason. It is what remains after destruction learned how to arrange itself into light.